The judge's gavel struck wood like a gunshot. Across the courtroom table, my mother's hands trembled against the polished oak, her lawyer leaning close with whispered urgency. Papers shuffled. Someone coughed. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. When the financial statements landed in front of His Honor, $73,000 in unauthorized transfers glowing under fluorescent light, I didn't flinch. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment. They'd spent my entire life convincing me I wasn't capable of managing my own money. Today, the court would decide who was right. Welcome to Revenge with Precious, where we share real stories of betrayal, resilience, and the courage to stand up for yourself. These are tales of people who refused to stay silent, who drew boundaries when love turned toxic, and who chose their peace over family obligation. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, these stories are for you. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that might change how you see your own life. Please, watch till the end. Let's get started. The bank manager's face told me everything before her mouth opened. She adjusted her glasses twice, clicked her pen 3 times, then finally slid a single printed page across her desk. My savings account balance stared back at me. $417. Last month, it had been $78,000. I blinked hard, certain the numbers would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. My throat went dry. There must be a mistake, I said quietly. The manager, a woman named Keiko with kind eyes that suddenly looked too sympathetic, shook her head. I'm afraid not, Miss Thorne. The transfer was authorized yesterday afternoon by your joint account signatories. Joint signatories. The words landed like stones in my stomach. I'd never authorized joint signatories. I lived alone. I paid my own bills. I was 32 years old, for God's sake. Who, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper, signed off on this? Keiko's pause lasted 3 heartbeats too long. Your parents, Miss Thorne. Bryce and Cordelia Thorne. According to our records, they've had full access to your account since you were 19. I don't remember driving to their house. One moment I was sitting in that sterile bank office, staring at numbers that couldn't be real. The next, I was standing in my parents' pristine kitchen, my hands shaking so badly I had to grip the counter to steady them. Mom stood by the stove, stirring chamomile tea with the same silver spoon she'd used my entire childhood. The kitchen smelled like lavender and lies. "Elara, sweetheart," she said without turning around, as if she'd been expecting me. "I made your favorite." My father sat at the breakfast table, newspaper spread wide, reading glasses perched on his nose. Neither of them looked remotely concerned. "Where's my money?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, flat. Mom finally turned, her expression soft with manufactured concern. "We moved your funds to a safer account, darling. You've been making impulsive decisions lately. That online shopping habit, those weekend trips. We're just protecting you." Impulsive decisions. I'd bought groceries and paid rent. "I'm 32, I said slowly. Dad lowered his newspaper. "And clearly still learning financial responsibility. You should be thanking us, Elara. We just saved you from yourself." That night, alone in my apartment with the city lights bleeding through thin curtains, I said it out loud for the first time. My name is Elara Thorne, and my parents just stole $77,000 from me. The words tasted like copper. Like truth I'd been swallowing for years without naming it. I sat on my bedroom floor, back against the wall, phone dark in my hand. Every message I'd started typing, I'd deleted. Who would I even call? My college roommate who moved to Portland? My work friends who knew my parents as the generous couple who sent care packages? Nobody knew what happened behind our family's closed doors. Nobody knew I'd never been allowed to hold my own bank card until I was 25. I'd thought it was love. Careful, concerned love from parents who wanted to protect me from the world's sharp edges. Now, staring at my empty account balance on my phone screen, I understood. It wasn't love. It had never been love. It was control, dressed up in worry, perfumed with concern, and I'd been breathing it in so long I'd forgotten what freedom smelled like. Memory works like floodwater. Once the dam breaks, it all comes rushing back at once. I was 15 when Dad first explained his philosophy on money. We'd been sitting in his study, mahogany desk between us, and he'd slid a ledger across the wood. "Every dollar you spend gets recorded here," he'd said, tapping the empty columns. "Money management builds character, Ilara. Most kids your age waste their allowance on nonsense. You're going to learn discipline." I'd felt special. Chosen. While my friends bought magazines and movie tickets, I asked permission for every purchase. Dad kept my bank card in his wallet, attached to a steel money clip. "For safekeeping," he'd said. Mom reinforced it with softer words. "We're teaching you responsibility, sweetheart. One day you'll thank us." I did thank them. Over and over. Even when I was 17 and wanted to buy my best friend a birthday present, I'd had to submit a written request explaining why the expense was necessary. Even when I was 20 and my college roommate asked why I couldn't just Venmo her for pizza, I'd made excuses. "My parents helped me budget," I'd said, smiling like it was normal. Like it was love. My first real paycheck arrived 3 months after college graduation. I'd landed a junior analyst position at Meridian Consulting, nothing fancy but respectable. Decent salary. Benefits. A cubicle with a window view. I'd framed the offer letter and hung it in my childhood bedroom before moving out. Mom and Dad took me to dinner to celebrate, to an expensive steakhouse downtown where the menu had no prices. Dad ordered champagne. "We're so proud of you," Mom said, squeezing my hand across the white tablecloth. "You've worked so hard." The champagne arrived in delicate flutes, bubbles rising like tiny hopes. That's when Dad cleared his throat. "Now, about your salary," he began, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "Your mother and I have been discussing the best way to help you manage this new income. We think it's wise if your paychecks deposit into the family account, at least initially. We'll handle the budgeting, bill payments, savings allocation. You focus on excelling at work." I'd hesitated, the champagne suddenly too sweet in my mouth. "I thought I'd set up my own account," I said carefully. Mom's smile never wavered. "Darling, you've never managed money before. Not real money. Let us help you. Just until you get the hang of it." The erosion happened so gradually, I didn't notice I was disappearing. Small decisions first. I wanted to rent an apartment in the arts district, exposed brick and big windows. Dad called it impractical. "Too expensive for what you'd get," he said, showing me spreadsheets proving his point. I ended up in a beige complex near the highway, rent-controlled and sensible. I didn't love it, but I convinced myself love wasn't the point. Responsibility was. Then job offers. When a startup approached me about a product manager role, salary bump included, Mom worried aloud over Sunday dinner. "Those companies fold overnight, sweetheart. You have stability at Meridian. Why risk it?" I stayed at Meridian. The startup got acquired 2 years later for $40 million. I tried not to think about what I'd turned down. My wardrobe, my haircut, even my weekend plans, all filtered through their advice. "That dress is too bold for your figure. Long hair suits you better, trust us. Why waste money on concerts when you could save for your future?" Their concern felt like care. Their control felt like guidance. Until the day I tried to buy a coffee table without asking first, and my card declined because they'd reduced my weekly allowance without telling me. That's when I first felt the cage bars. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I'd gone to First National Bank during my lunch break, determined to open a separate checking account. Just something small, something mine. The banker, a young guy with nervous energy, typed my information into his system and frowned. "I'm sorry, Miss Thorne, but there's a notation on your profile." He angled his screen away from me, like the information was too sensitive to share. "What kind of notation?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "It appears there's an existing financial guardianship designation linked to your social security number. I can't open a new account without written authorization from your designated guardians." The fluorescent lights above hummed too loud. "I'm 32 years old," I said slowly. "I don't have guardians." He clicked through several screens, his frown deepening. "According to our records, Bryce and Cordelia Thorne were designated as your financial custodians when you opened your student account at age 19. That designation was never revoked." My hands went numb. Student account. I remembered filling out those forms, Dad guiding my hand to each signature line, explaining it was standard procedure for students on their parents' insurance. I'd trusted him. That trust was now a leash. That evening, I didn't call them. Didn't confront them. Didn't cry, though my body wanted to. Instead, I opened my laptop in the quiet of my 2-beige apartment and began typing. The email went to First National's Fraud Investigation Department. Subject line: Request for full documentation of financial authorizations. My fingers moved steadily across the keys. To whom it may concern, I am writing to formally request complete documentation of all financial authorizations, account agreements, and custodianship designations filed under my name, Elara Margot Thorne, Social Security number ending in 4721. I did not knowingly consent to ongoing financial guardianship beyond my student years and require immediate clarification of what permissions exist under my identity. Please provide all relevant paperwork, signature records, and account activity logs for the past 13 years. This is a formal request under federal banking disclosure laws. I expect full documentation within 15 business days. I read it 3 times, checking for emotion. There was none. Just facts. Just clarity. I hit send at 11:47 p.m. The whoosh of the outgoing message sounded like the first breath after years underwater. They arrived at 7 the next morning, before I'd finished my coffee. The knock was aggressive, insistent. When I opened the door, still in my robe, Dad pushed past me into the apartment, Mom trailing behind with her careful, wounded expression. "What the hell is this?" Dad demanded, waving a printed copy of my email. Somehow they'd already gotten it. Someone at the bank must have notified them immediately. His face was red, jaw tight. "You're making us look like criminals, Elara. After everything we've done for you." Mom touched my arm, her voice soft. "Sweetheart, we're just trying to help. Why are you doing this? What's gotten into you?" I pulled my arm away gently but firmly. "I want access to my own money," I said. "That's not unreasonable." Dad's laugh was harsh. "You think you're ready? You can barely keep track of your own schedule. Last month you missed a dentist appointment. You left your phone at work twice. You want us to believe you can handle $70,000 responsibly." The numbers hung in the air between us. 70,000. Money I'd earned. Money I'd saved. Money they'd moved without asking. "It's my money," I repeated quietly. Mom's mask slipped just slightly. "Money we've protected," she hissed. Then softer, "Money we've invested in your future." The documents arrived in a large manila envelope 11 days later. I'd taken the afternoon off work, told my supervisor I had a medical appointment. In a way, I did. This was surgery, cutting out something that had been growing wrong inside my life for years. I spread the papers across my dining table, page after page of bank forms, signature cards, authorization agreements. There, buried in a student loan application from 13 years ago, was the language that had trapped me. Co-signatory designation with full account access for financial oversight purposes, remaining active until formal revocation by all parties. Dad's signature. Mom's signature. And mine, young and uncertain, trusting. But that wasn't the worst part. Tucked inside a folder marked credit inquiries, I found something that made my blood go cold. 3 credit cards I'd never applied for. One through Capital First, limit $20,000. Another through Skyline Financial, limit $15,000. A third through Meridian Credit Union, limit $12,000. All opened within the past 5 years. All carrying balances. Total debt, $31,000. My signature on every application, except the handwriting wasn't quite mine. Close, but not exact. The E in Elara tilted wrong. The loop on the G in Margot too small. They'd forged them. Carefully. Almost perfectly. But forged. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a scanner I'd bought on my lunch break, and a methodical fury that felt almost like calm. Every document got scanned. Every page numbered and saved in a folder I labeled Evidence. I created a spreadsheet tracking every unauthorized charge. February 2021, $4,200 to Sunset Cruises. That was their anniversary trip. June 2022, $8,900 to Precision Home Remodeling. Their kitchen renovation. December 2023, $3,400 to Alpine Ski Resort. Their Christmas vacation. On and on. Years of charges. My credit. Their lifestyle. By 3 a.m., I had everything organized. Bank statements. Credit applications. Signature comparisons. A timeline spanning 13 years showing the pattern: isolate, control, exploit. I should have felt angry. Instead, I felt clear. Clarity has a weight to it, heavy and solid, like holding truth in both hands and finally understanding what it's been costing you to pretend it isn't there. I printed 3 copies of everything. One for me. One for a lawyer. One for whatever came next. The printer hummed in the dark, spitting out proof, page by page by page. The realization hit me while drinking coffee the next morning, watching commuters rush past my window toward lives they controlled. They hadn't just managed my money. They'd built an infrastructure around me, invisible scaffolding designed to keep me dependent. Every helpful suggestion had been a brick. Every concerned question, a bar. My phone buzzed. Mom, brunch Sunday? We miss you. I stared at the message. They missed me. Or they missed the access. The control? The steady stream of funds I'd been too trusting to notice disappearing? I opened my Photos app, scrolled back through years of family pictures. There I was at 25, smiling at Dad's birthday party, unaware I was already $30,000 in debt under my own name. There at 28, helping Mom plant roses, while my savings drained into their vacation fund. Every smile now looked like ignorance. Every hug felt like theft I'd been too naive to name. I deleted the photos. Not out of anger, but necessity. You can't heal what you keep reopening. I typed back, can't Sunday. Busy. 3 words. The first boundary I'd ever set without apologizing for it. Finding a lawyer took 2 days of research. I needed someone who understood financial abuse, not just fraud. Someone who'd seen cases where family became predator. The firm of Castellan and Price had a free consultation. I took it. Attorney Dexter Castellan was 50-something, gray-bearded, with eyes that had clearly seen worse than my story. But he listened carefully, taking notes while I explained everything. When I finished, he sat back in his leather chair. This is textbook financial exploitation, he said quietly. Your parents established legal access when you were young, then systematically expanded that access into identity theft. The forged credit applications are criminal. The unauthorized transfers are civil at minimum, potentially criminal depending on intent. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs. What can I do? He pulled out a legal pad, began writing. We file a motion for complete financial separation. Request the court to revoke all existing authorizations, freeze any accounts they control, and launch an investigation into the forged credit lines. We'll also petition for restitution. Every dollar they took, you're entitled to recover. He looked at me seriously. But understand, this will destroy your family relationships. Once we file, there's no going back. I thought about that. About Sunday dinners and birthday cards. About the performance of love I'd been giving standing ovations to for 32 years. There's nothing to go back to, I said. When can we start? They must have sensed something shifting because the dinner invitation came 3 days before we planned to file. Mom's text was uncharacteristically urgent, important family matter. Need you here tonight. 6 p.m. Don't be late. I almost declined. But Dexter advised me to go, to observe, to document if possible. They might reveal something useful, he said. And bring your phone. Record everything if Colorado's one-party consent laws apply. I checked. They did. So I went to that dinner with my phone in my purse, voice recorder running, and my spine straighter than it had been in years. The dining room was set formally, good china and cloth napkins. Dad carved roast chicken with surgical precision. Mom served vegetables with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We ate in tense silence for 10 minutes before Dad cleared his throat. Your mother and I have been concerned, he began. Your behavior lately, this distance you're creating, these questions about finances. It's not like you, Alara. Mom nodded, dabbing her lips with her napkin. We think you might be struggling. Depression, maybe. Or anxiety. These things run in families. I set down my fork carefully. I'm not struggling, I said evenly. Dad's expression hardened. We've consulted with our attorney. If your mental state continues to deteriorate, we may need to petition for renewed financial guardianship. Just temporarily, until you're stable again. The words hung there like smoke. Financial guardianship. They were going to trap me all over again, but this time using mental health as the excuse. My mother's face was a mask of concern, but her eyes were calculating. Dad's jaw was set, immovable. This was their move. Their counterstrike before I could even attack. I felt something cold settle in my chest, something hard and certain. I picked up my fork again, cut a piece of chicken with deliberate slowness. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady. If you think you can control me with my own money, you've underestimated me. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Dad's knuckles whitened around his knife. Mom's breath caught audibly. "Excuse me," Dad said, voice low and dangerous. I met his eyes. "I know about the credit cards. The forged signatures. The $31,000 in debt you've accumulated under my name. I know about the transfers, the family account, all of it. And I've hired a lawyer." Mom's face went pale. "Ilara, sweetheart, you're confused." "I'm not confused," I said quietly. "I'm done." I stood, placed my napkin beside my plate, and walked out while they were still frozen in their chairs. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice crack, "You're making a terrible mistake." I didn't look back. Mistakes, I'd learned, only count when you repeat them. Dexter filed the motion the next morning. Emergency petition for financial separation and asset recovery. The legal language was dense, but the core was simple. My parents had exploited their access to my finances for over a decade, committed identity theft, and were now threatening further control through false mental health claims. We requested immediate court intervention. By noon, my parents had been served. By 2 p.m., my phone started ringing. I didn't answer. By 5 p.m., they'd hired their own attorney, a man named Griffith Pierce who specialized in family law and had a reputation for aggressive defense. By 6 p.m., they'd filed a countermotion claiming I was mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and that their actions had been necessary protective measures. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. I spent those weeks preparing. Dexter coached me on courtroom demeanor, calm, factual, unemotional. "Don't let them make this about feelings," he said. "This is about law. About theft. About documentation." I gathered more evidence. Bank statements going back to my first job. Email exchanges where Dad casually mentioned moving funds around. Text messages from Mom about our account. Every piece of proof that I'd been managed, not helped. Controlled, not loved. The night before the hearing, I couldn't eat. I stood in my apartment, looking at the life they designed for me, beige walls and careful choices, and I packed a bag. Just in case. Just in case I had to run from the verdict. The courtroom smelled like old wood and tension. I sat beside Dexter at a long table, my folder of evidence in front of me. Across the aisle, my parents sat with Griffith Pierce, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked like he charged by the minute. Mom was crying softly into a tissue. Dad's face was stone. The judge, Honorable Patricia Vance, was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics. She reviewed the initial filings in silence while we waited. Finally, she looked up. "This is an unusual case," she said. "We have adult financial separation complicated by allegations of identity theft and counterclaims of mental instability. Mr. Pierce, you may begin." Griffith stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into his defense. He painted my parents as devoted caretakers who'd sacrificed everything to help their financially naive daughter. He described me as impulsive, forgetful, unable to manage basic responsibilities. He claimed the credit cards were co-signed, not forged, and that I'd verbally authorized every purchase. "Miss Thorne has a history of poor judgment," he said smoothly. "Her parents simply stepped in to prevent disaster. Now she's rewriting history to avoid accountability." I sat perfectly still, hands folded, while he dismantled my character for 20 minutes. When he finished, Dexter stood. "Your Honor, if I may present evidence." Dexter was methodical. He started with the bank records, projecting them on a screen for the court. $73,000 transferred from my account to my parents over 3 years. Then the credit card applications, with signature analysis from a forensic handwriting expert. Note the inconsistencies, Dexter said, pointing to the projected signatures. Miss Thorne's authentic signature has a distinctive upward tilt on the final E in Alara. These applications show a flattened E, consistent with someone attempting to copy her style but lacking the natural muscle memory. Griffith objected. This is speculative. Judge Vance overruled. Continue, Mr. Castellan. Dexter presented the charges next. Every cruise, every renovation, every vacation paid with my credit while I worked overtime and lived in a rental I couldn't afford to furnish. He showed my tax returns proving my income against their spending patterns, the math impossible to reconcile. Then he played the recording from the dinner. My father's voice filled the courtroom. We may need to petition for renewed financial guardianship. Judge Vance's expression shifted. She looked at my parents for the first time with something other than neutrality. When Dexter sat down, the room was silent. Griffith stood again, attempted damage control, but his tone had lost its confidence. Miss Thorne's parents acted in good faith, he tried. Judge Vance cut him off. Mr. Pierce, good faith doesn't include forged signatures. The unraveling happened slowly, then all at once. Judge Vance called my father to the stand for questioning. He walked up stiffly, his confidence from the dinner table nowhere to be found. Under oath, his story started falling apart. Mr. Thorne, the judge said, reading from the documents. Can you explain why you transferred $12,000 from your daughter's savings to your personal account on March 15, 2023? Dad cleared his throat. That was for household expenses we shared. Alara was living with us at the time. According to her lease agreement, Judge Vance countered, holding up another paper, Miss Thorne was living independently at that address since 2020. 3 years before this transfer. His face paled. I may have the dates confused. And these credit card charges, she continued. A Mediterranean cruise for 2, booked under Bryce and Cordelia Thorne but charged to a card in your daughter's name. Can you explain that? She authorized it, he said weakly. Verbally. Verbally, Judge Vance repeated. Yet when Mr. Castellan asked Miss Thorne about this cruise, she had no knowledge of it. And you have no documentation of this alleged authorization. Dad's silence was answer enough. Mom started crying harder. The judge's gaze was steel. Mr. Thorne, I've seen financial abuse cases before. This is textbook. You established control early, normalized it, then exploited it systematically. Step down. When it was my turn to testify, my legs felt weak standing. But my voice stayed steady. Judge Vance asked me directly, Miss Thorne, in your own words, what do you want from this court? I looked at my parents. They stared back, strangers wearing familiar faces. I want full financial autonomy, I said quietly. I want every account, every authorization, every connection to my identity severed. I want them barred from accessing anything with my name on it. And I want to never owe them an explanation for my choices again. The judge nodded. And do you wish to maintain a relationship with your parents after this separation? The question hung in the air. Mom's tissue froze halfway to her face. Dad's eyes were pleading now, desperate. I thought about all the years I'd twisted myself into shapes that fit their need for control. All the apologies for things I hadn't done wrong. All the gratitude for love that came with conditions. No, Your Honor, I said. The word echoed. Mom gasped. Dad's face crumbled. But I felt nothing but relief, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying since childhood. Judge Vance made notes. I'll issue my ruling within the week. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck. The sound was final. I walked out of that courtroom into autumn sunlight, and for the first time in 32 years, I felt like I could breathe all the way down. The envelope arrived on a Thursday. Official court seal, thick paper. I opened it standing in my kitchen, afternoon light slanting across the counter. Order of financial separation. The court finds in favor of Alara Margot Thorne. All financial authorizations linking Bryce and Cordelia Thorne to the petitioner's accounts are hereby revoked effective immediately. The respondents are barred from accessing, managing, or inquiring about any financial accounts, credit lines, or assets belonging to the petitioner. Furthermore, the respondents are ordered to repay $73,000 in unauthorized transfers within 180 days, plus court costs. Failure to comply will result in additional penalties and potential criminal prosecution for identity theft. I read it 3 times. Each word solid, real, legally binding. They couldn't touch my money. They couldn't question my choices. They couldn't pretend concern while tightening the leash. I was free. Legally, completely, permanently free. I called Dexter. I got the order, I said. Congratulations, he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. You did the hard part. Now go live your life. I stood there after hanging up, holding that paper, and I started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, just relief pouring out in waves. The cage was open. The door was wide. And I could finally walk through it. They called, of course. Dozens of times that first week. I didn't answer. Then the voicemails started. Dad's voice was angry. You've destroyed this family, Ilara. I hope you're proud. Your mother can't stop crying. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us. Mom's was wounded. Please, sweetheart, we can fix this. We can work this out. Don't throw away your family over money. We're your parents. We love you. I listened to each message once, then deleted them. Love, I'd learned, doesn't steal. Love doesn't forge signatures. Love doesn't threaten control when you try to leave. What they'd given me wasn't love. It was management disguised as care, and I'd finally learned to tell the difference. The texts came next, oscillating between rage and guilt. You're heartless. How could you? We're your parents. I blocked their numbers. Blocked their emails. Changed my address with the post office. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. Some relationships can't be fixed because they were never healthy to begin with. They were built on power imbalance and maintained through control. And I was done performing gratitude for my own imprisonment. That night, I opened a new savings account. Just mine. No joint access. No custodians. I transferred in the first paycheck that was completely, entirely mine since I was 19. The balance glowed on my screen, $2,847.50. Not much, but every cent was freedom. The real fallout came 6 weeks later. The court's order triggered an automatic investigation by the state's Financial Crimes Division. Once fraud is proven in civil court, criminal authorities take notice. Especially when it involves identity theft and forged documents. I received a call from Detective Wu, a patient-voiced woman who explained they were building a case. We've subpoenaed your parents' financial records, she said. The pattern goes beyond just you. There are irregularities in their business accounts, unreported income, possible tax fraud. Your case opened a much bigger investigation. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite guilt, but something adjacent. What happens to them? I asked. That depends on what we find, Detective Wu said. But identity theft carries serious penalties. They're looking at potential criminal charges. After she hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment. They'd built their comfortable life on my stolen credit. Now that foundation was cracking. Dad's small consulting business, the one he'd been so proud of, was under audit. Mom's boutique volunteer work, funded by money that should have been mine, was tainted now. Their friends were asking questions. Their reputation, that carefully curated image of devoted parents, was unraveling thread by thread. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of the whole story. Tired of being angry. Tired of waiting for an apology that would never come. So I stopped waiting and started living. Rebuilding my life happened in small, deliberate steps. First, I moved. Left the beige apartment they'd chosen and found a place in the arts district I'd wanted years ago. Exposed brick, big windows, morning light that turned everything gold. Expensive, but I could afford it now that my money was mine. I furnished it slowly, choosing each piece myself. A blue velvet couch because I liked blue. Abstract art for the walls because it made me feel something. Plants everywhere, green and alive and growing. I changed jobs too. Took that product manager role at a startup I'd been too afraid to pursue before. The risk felt different now. Failure wasn't something to avoid at all costs. It was just information, just learning. Without their voices in my head predicting disaster, I could finally hear my own judgment. And it was good. Better than good. 3 months in, I got promoted. 6 months in, I hired my own financial advisor. Not to manage me, but to teach me. To show me what wealth building looked like when you controlled your own assets. For the first time, I understood money not as something that defined my worth, but as a tool. Just a tool. One I could use to build the life I actually wanted. The court-ordered repayment came in installments. $73,000 returned slowly, grudgingly, accompanied by no apologies. Just transfers appearing in my account like silent admissions of guilt. I put it all in savings and tried not to think about where it had been. 9 months after the court order, an envelope arrived that I almost didn't open. No return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting. Inside was a single card. Cream-colored, plain. "We're sorry for everything. No excuses. We were wrong." That was it. No explanation. No justification. Just 6 words and a signature. I stood in my sunny apartment, holding that card, feeling absolutely nothing. No anger. No satisfaction. No forgiveness either, just empty space where those emotions used to live. I thought about writing back. Thought about all the things I could say. But in the end, I put the card in a drawer without responding. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like moving on. Like choosing peace over closure. Like understanding that some chapters end without resolution, and that's okay. That evening, I met my friend Kieran for dinner at a rooftop restaurant I'd never have chosen before. Too expensive, too indulgent, too much. But now those words didn't mean the same thing. We ordered wine and laughed about nothing important, and when the check came, I paid without calculating whether I could afford it. Because I could. Because it was mine. Walking home through city streets humming with life, I whispered to myself, "Welcome home, Alara." Not to a place, but to a version of myself I'd never been allowed to meet before. Someone who made choices without permission. Someone who understood her worth wasn't measured in dollars or approval. Someone who'd learned that the loudest act of revolution is sometimes just living freely. The court had given me my finances back. But I'd given myself something bigger. I'd given myself permission to exist on my own terms. And that was worth more than any number in any account. That was everything. Thank you for watching this story. If moments like these resonate with you, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who couldn't see you, then you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day, real accounts of people who found their voice, set their boundaries, and walked into the life they deserved. Subscribe so you never miss the next upload, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Compliments of the season. I love you all.